The film begins in Sweden, where a British family sets off for a summer getaway on the remote island of Swalta. The Smiths, Richard, his wife Susan, their teenage daughter Jessie, and younger son Sam, are excited for a quiet vacation. On the way, Susan brings up a chilling piece of history. Back in 1824, the islanders quarantined themselves during a deadly flu outbreak. With food running out, desperation drove them to cannibalism. Although the quarantine eventually ended, the horrific past gave rise to a disturbing tradition. Every decade, the island hosts an 8-hour festival called Karantan, a theatrical tribute to the ancestors who sacrificed themselves. The family stops at a small coastal cafe before catching the ferry. The owner is openly hostile. When Susan tries to make small talk, asking about his children, he coldly replies that they're dead. Meanwhile, Jessie and Sam wander around and stumble upon a grotesque sight, a seabird with its head brutally severed. They snap a photo, shaken by the discovery. When Richard asks about the ferry to Swalta, the cafe owner reacts with alarm, dropping his plate. He warns them that traveling to the island during Karantan is forbidden, adding that the locals despise outsiders and might even eat them. Richard brushes it off as superstition, showing the man their Airbnb reservation from a host named Mats Larsson. The family dismisses the warnings, eager to witness the bizarre festival for themselves. Moments later, they hear the rumble of the ferry approaching. As they head toward the dock, the cafe owner shouts another warning, but Richard ignores him. At the ticket booth, the clerk is visibly shaken when they request 4 tickets to Swalta. Richard realizes he left his wallet at the cafe, but quickly retrieves it and returns to the family. They board the ferry, though the unnerving stares from the locals make the atmosphere tense. A bald, menacing man even offers Susan a drink, only to hurl insults at Richard when he tries to intervene. When they arrive at Swalta, the entire village has gathered at the harbor, glaring at the outsiders. The community leader, KillerA, demands to know who they are. Richard explains they're just on vacation, hoping to see the Karantan play. A young boy named Ingemar immediately tells them to leave, but Susan stubbornly insists on staying, revealing that one of her ancestors was a British officer killed by the islanders over 200 years ago. This enrages KillerA, but before she can force them out, their Airbnb host, Mats Larsson, steps forward to defend them. The villagers are furious at Mats for renting to foreigners, but he argues that the house belongs to his late mother, and he doesn't need their approval. After heated debate, KillerA reluctantly allows the family to stay, warning them it won't be for long. Mats escorts them to the Airbnb, showing unusual interest in Jessie. He casually mentions that his mother was beheaded in that very house 10 years ago, in the same chair Richard is sitting on. The family is unnerved but tries to shake it off. After he leaves, they unpack and try to settle in. Jessie draws a bath but is unsettled when she hears faint noises coming from behind the bathroom mirror. That night, their rest is shattered by shouts outside. Richard and Susan peek out to see villagers gathered with flaming torches. When Susan pleads with them to stop, an islander throws a dead raccoon onto their doorstep before the group disperses. Disturbed, the couple begins to question their decision to come here. From a distance, KillerA silently watches them, her gaze filled with suspicion. By morning, one day before Karantan begins, Jessie confides in her father that she feels like someone has been watching her from the shadows of the house. While Jessie is taking a bath, she hears unsettling noises coming from behind the large mirror. What she doesn't know is that someone is secretly watching her and her family from a hidden room filled with monitors streaming live CCTV footage of the house. Later, Richard visits Mats to complain. He angrily hands him the carcass of the raccoon that the villagers threw at their doorstep and vents his frustration, saying that despite Mats' reassurances, they've felt nothing but threatened since arriving. He even threatens to leave a scathing review online. Nervous, Mats promises to speak with the community. That afternoon, the Smiths go out exploring the island and snapping photos. But elsewhere, things take a darker turn. The cafe owner from the mainland and his wife are found brutally murdered. Meanwhile, Richard and Susan spot several boats unloading for empty coffins, leaving them puzzled. Soon after, a detective named Forsberg arrives on the island. Speaking with a harbor attendant, he learns about the cafe owner's death and suspects a recently released convict named Johan, the same bald, menacing man from the ferry. Forsberg fears Johan may be on a killing spree and warns that the community is in danger. Back at the Smiths' Airbnb, Richard and Susan share an intimate moment, unaware they're being watched through hidden cameras by a voyeur pleasuring himself. Meanwhile, the villagers rehearse for the Karantan play, only to be interrupted by Forsberg. He questions them about Johan, but Klara dismisses him, warning that outside laws don't apply on Swalta. Instead, she declares that Karantan itself is the law. Forsberg shoots back a chilling warning. If she's not careful, she could lose her head. As he departs, Johan is seen lurking in the shadows, watching. Elsewhere, Jesse and Sam wander into a local cafe run by Ingemar, who bluntly tells them they've made a huge mistake by coming. The siblings shrug it off, explaining that their parents only dragged them here to see some stupid play. When one of the locals grabs Sam, he tosses sprinkles in the man's eyes. But soon both siblings stumble upon a group of islanders in eerie masks, carrying coffins marked English liar. Terrified, they run. Back at the Airbnb, things grow creepier. Mats is shown alone in bed, bizarrely dressed in women's lingerie. When Jesse and Sam return, he bolts out of a room in embarrassment. Jesse then notices her own bed is disturbed and her underwear missing. Troubled, she approaches the mirror in her room and draws a heart on it, unaware of what's lurking on the other side. Meanwhile, Klara gathers the villagers to finalize preparations for Karantan. She announces this will be her last year directing the festival, and she intends to make it unforgettable. She reveals the sinister truth. Historically, their ancestors honored the dead not just with theater, but with ritual sacrifice of outsiders. For 3 decades, the practice has been abandoned, but now, with a foreign family on the island, Klara insists it's time to restore tradition. Shocked, the younger villagers, including Ingemar and even Klara's own son Sven, protest, saying they thought they were only meant to frighten the outsiders. But Klara silences them, declaring that they must obey her command. That night, Klara corners Mats, pressuring him to join her plan. When he resists, she exposes his disturbing secret, his voyeurism and his rule-breaking by inviting outsiders. She warns that the community has tolerated him long enough, and now it's time for him to repay their silence with loyalty. Reluctantly, Mats agrees. The next morning, the long-awaited day of Karantan arrives. A masked figure opens the ceremony with a drumbeat as villagers assemble. At the same time, Mats visits the Smiths with cookies, announcing that the community has formally invited them to attend the play. But to his disappointment, the family casually declines, saying they'd rather swim at the harbor and might just show up for the finale, since sitting through 8 hours sounds unbearable. Meanwhile, the long-awaited Karantan play begins, retelling the grim history of 200 years earlier. The island's leader ordered the harbor sealed when rumors of a plague swept across Europe. The villagers relied on the English to tell them when it was safe, but months turned into years, food ran out, and starvation forced them into cannibalism. Back at the Airbnb, the Smiths return from their swim and notice the plate of cookies Mats had left for them. Hungry, they dig in, only to suddenly collapse, the cookies laced with drugs. Mats watches with twisted satisfaction, believing his plan has succeeded. As the play continues, it reveals the islanders eventually discovered the truth. There never was a plague. The English had deceived them, letting them starve while living in safety. Enraged, the villagers rose up and slaughtered the Englishmen in cold blood. Elsewhere, Mats prepares for his most depraved act yet, slipping into Jessie's stolen underwear and getting ready to assault her unconscious body. But in a shocking reversal, the Smiths suddenly spring to life. They never ate the cookies. Instead, they ambush Mats and stab him to death. The horrifying truth comes out. The Smiths are not helpless tourists at all. They're a family of serial killers who target isolated communities for their own blood-soaked games. It was Richard who murdered the cafe owner when he returned for his wallet, and it was Jesse and Sam who decapitated the seabird at the cafe. Armed with new weapons, the Smiths go on a killing spree across the island, slaughtering villagers in brutal fashion. From afar, Klara and her followers watch the carnage, but have no idea who the killers are. Despite the chaos, Klara insists the Karantan must go on. It's her final year directing it. Panicked villagers assume Johan, the ex-convict, is responsible for the massacre. Jesse and Sam head to the harbor, pretending to be terrified survivors. When a sympathetic guard embraces them, they murder her in cold blood and gleefully take a selfie with her corpse. Moments later, Sven discovers the body. Horrified, he fires a flare into the sky, its red glow alerting the mainland. Richard and Susan see it, calmly singing to each other, unfazed that the police may soon arrive. The remaining villagers, including KillerA and Sven, hide in a hut, barricading the door. The Smiths attempt to break in. Richard even stabs through the wooden panels, wounding KillerA. Sven retaliates, plunging a blade into Richard, but the man barely flinches, eerily resilient. By the time the killers force their way inside, KillerA and Sven have already escaped, leaving the rest to be butchered. The Smiths show no mercy, even killing the young boy, Ingemar. Elsewhere, Detective Forsberg gets word of the massacre. Another officer insists Johan is behind it, unaware of the true culprits. With nearly the entire village wiped out, the Smiths pile the bodies and set them ablaze. As the flames rise, Richard and Susan reminisce about how the stench of burning flesh reminds them of their honeymoon. Out of nowhere, Richard and Sam begin arguing. In a shocking fit of rage, Richard stabs Sam in the neck, killing him instantly. Susan and Jesse don't panic. Instead, they casually ask why. Richard explains that Sam had been showing him disrespect the entire trip. Jesse then chillingly reveals that Sam was never really her brother at all, just a hired killer meant to pose as one. Meanwhile, Sven urges his mother to flee, but KillerA refuses. Determined to finish what she started, she declares this Karantan will be her last. Reluctantly, Sven arms himself with a shotgun. At the same time, the Smiths arrive at Matt's home and uncover his secret lair, a room filled with CCTV screens, proving he had been spying on them all along. Inside Matt's lair, the Smiths make another disturbing discovery, a hidden passage connecting directly to their Airbnb. Richard decides to slip through the tunnel, while Jessie casually re-enters the house from the front door. But the moment she steps inside, Sven shoots her. Wounded, Jessie collapses, cleverly playing the role of the helpless victim. She frantically tells Sven and KillerA that Mats lost his mind and murdered her father and brother. She warns that Mats could still be hiding upstairs. Suspicious but concerned, Sven grabs his shotgun and heads to search the rooms. KillerA, however, remains doubtful. Jessie's wide-eyed innocence and fragile demeanor slowly chip away at her suspicion, until Susan suddenly storms in. Mother and daughter stage an emotional reunion, further convincing KillerA that they're nothing more than terrified tourists. Upstairs, Sven explores Jessie's bedroom, only to find Matt's mutilated corpse. Realizing Jessie has been lying, he presses on, discovering Richard slumped in another room. Before Sven can react, Richard lunges, slashing his throat. With his dying breath, Sven manages to fire his shotgun, blasting off Richard's hand before collapsing. Richard stumbles downstairs, bloodied and maimed. At this moment, the Smiths finally drop the facade. No more pretending. They gleefully reveal themselves as the true perpetrators of the massacre. Furious, KillerA denounces them, calling the British deceivers, and declaring that history is repeating itself. Clutching a knife, she prepares to fight, but before she can act, Detective Forsberg bursts in and shoots her in the head. Believing he just saved the innocent family, Forsberg unknowingly kills the island's last hope, still playing the part of survivors. The Smiths are escorted to the harbor to leave the island. Nearby, Johan, the ex-convict everyone suspected, awakens groggily on a boat, unaware of the carnage. The police immediately assume he's behind the slaughter and gun him down on sight. As the boat carries them away, Richard turns to his family with a chilling smile and delivers the final line. The family that slays together stays together. Thanks for watching this chilling horror recap. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit like, drop a comment with your favorite twist, and subscribe to the channel for more spine-tingling movie recaps every week. And remember, never trust a friendly smile on a remote island.